Welcome, everybody, to an extended Masters version of the C4 Sports Update. I'm with Matt Bass, Charles Harbaugh IV. Matt Bass, longtime golf advocate, Clark County Board of Supervisor, local attorney, but you are a golf expert, and there's so much at stake this year in the Masters tournament, so many different storylines before Tiger even. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about your introduction to golf.
You bet. Thanks, Charles. Appreciate y'all having me. I'll take up any opportunity that I can get to talk golf. So I grew up playing multiple sports, I think like most kids about 30 years ago did, and I would advocate that kids do that these days, but that's a story for another day. It wasn't until probably the mid-'90s that I got interested in golf, and it was primarily because of Tiger Woods. Growing up in the era of Michael Jordan and Cal Ripken and individual stars to follow, and I think maybe breaking the mold somewhat from a more team-oriented focus. Tiger just jumped off the map to me, became a big fan of Tiger's, followed him, watched him play every single tournament, and from there it was high school golf, followed by working at golf courses in pretty much any position that one could find, from the pro shop to the carts to the maintenance, and onto the college golf team, club team, I should say, at UVA. Not good enough to play D1, but I was shooting in the 70s pretty regularly back then, so played on a pretty good college golf club team at UVA, and thought about going into the teaching business for a little bit, studied, even considered taking my PAT player test, but I never did. And it was probably a good decision in retrospect because I just can't stand having to teach hand-eye coordination. That was the one thing that turned me off from teaching golf is you can teach all the right mechanics, but you can't teach hand-eye coordination. And as much as I love it, I'm glad I chose a different profession.
Matt, I can attest to your golf skill because I've played with you, but what's your favorite local course around here to play?
Oh, boy. I got to give shout-out to Shenandoah Valley. Been around forever, 3 nines, and it's just the most consistent course as far as being maintained. You pretty much always know what you're going to get when you get out there as far as tees, fairways, and greens. And it's a nice test. It's got some longer holes. It's got some shorter holes. So it'll always have a place in my heart. But I'm currently a member of Millwood Country Club, and love that place. Going to have you out one of these days.
Absolutely. So before we get into the Masters, someone, as you mentioned, who grew up with Tiger as such a star in the sport, and viewership just skyrockets when people know that he's going to play. He's going to play, right?
All signs point to yes, Charles. I would be shocked at this point if he didn't play. And I think, last week you'd be saying, well, I'd be shocked if he did. But now certainly it's looking like he's coming together. I just saw one of his press conferences. He looks like he's in great physical shape, at least as far as upper body strength goes. And he said he has no problem with the physical part of golf. I think the real test, as he will tell you, will be walking that course. Augusta is a challenging walk. It's got undulations. It's not short at all, so it might be tough for him.
And you saw he switched shoes from the Nike tennis shoes. Now he's got a soft sole shoe, so that might help him in his comeback bid.
I bet that Tiger is looking for every angle he can get. That's, he really kind of created that movement for all of golf in multiple respects, not only with the equipment and training, down to the details, the shoes. Any edge that Tiger could get, he took, and that was a big reason for his success.
Matt, regardless of what happens this weekend with the Masters tournament, what do you think the future holds for Tiger Woods?
So I think in part that may depend on how he does this week. Honestly, if I had to guess right now, I would say he makes the cut because he knows Augusta so well, and I don't think he has to be at 100% physically in order to compete there. But I doubt Tiger plays regular competitive golf again. He said as much. I think he will gear up every year looking to compete at the Masters. And you may see him, play select events, particularly with courses and in weather that fits his eye. Tiger has always been, to my mind, a big weather guy. He doesn't like playing in the tough conditions. He prefers it to be nice and complacent, so you're looking at places like Florida, maybe California once or twice, but I don't think you'll see him play more than a handful of regular events every season.
Speaking of who can compete in the Masters this year, give me a lay of the land, Matt.
Well, it's pretty easy if you take a look at the top 10 right now in golf. All of those guys are favored and have good odds. We have a new world number one in Scotty Sheffler, young kid, and I couldn't help but do a little bit of research coming into this segment, and I determined that the average age of the top 10 golfers in 2022 is 28 years old. That is compared to 10 years ago where it was 32, and 10 years before that in 2002 where it was also 32 years old. So the guys are getting younger, they're getting stronger, they're following in that Tiger mold, and you just look down the list and you see guys like Scheffler, who's coming off a big-time win at the match play event. You got perennial favorites at Augusta like Jon Rahm. Jordan Spieth has been playing better golf recently, and I think one of the questions to be answered is, will the big guns, the Brooks Koepkas, Dustin Johnsons, Rory Mcilroy, can Rory finally get that career Grand Slam and win at Augusta? All of these are names to watch, in addition to a number of young stars that are out there right now.
So you mentioned a lot of the younger golfers taking over post-Tiger. Tell me about the state of golf these days and what the next 5 years or so holds for the sport.
Yeah, perfect natural segue into that. I mean, you're talking about just a number of young guns out there, and they're almost too numerous to name, but you look at some of these guys who have been winning over the last year, 2, 3, and another stat that just kind of I did on my own in preparation in hopes of impressing you guys was coming up with the fact that these guys have won 90 tournaments, and you think about that collectively, the top 10, and they are 28 years old. That just, you got to take Tiger and Phil out of the equation if you're going to do it for years past. But these guys are winning at clips that haven't been seen in quite some time, and it's really exciting. I mean, Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, Xander Schauffele, all these guys under 30 years old, competitive week in, week out, and in major tournaments. And it's great to see that kind of competition, particularly among these young stars. Then you mix the Tigers, the older guys, the Dustin Johnsons into the mix, and I think Dustin's probably got another 5 years of good top golf in him. So you mix all those factors together, and I think golf is in as good a competitive state as it's been probably in my lifetime, to be honest with you, Charles.
Matt, there's 90 golfers taking part in Augusta this week. How many do you see making that cut, the Thursday and Friday when they tee off? What do you see as that number?
Yeah, I mean, usually you're going to be talking around about 50 guys making the cut. I think it depends on where the number is. It's Augusta can be hard to predict in some respects because it seems like it caters to the hot golfer of the moment. And there are a bunch of guys, including a number of first-time winners this year, who are playing really well right now and have been for the last couple of weeks. So you expect them to make the cut. You expect them to probably be in contention somewhat. A guy like a Joaquin Niemann, who just won several weeks ago, Riviera. You talk about an older guy like a Kevin Kisner, who's a Georgia Bulldog in college, and he comes in as one of the seasoned veterans, as it were. But you look for him to play well, coming off a good performance at the match play. So it's tough to predict where those numbers go. A lot depends on the conditions. Looks like it's going to be windy and a little bit cooler down at Augusta this weekend. But that'll be interesting. It'll probably really mean the guys who are playing good top golf right now. But yeah, I would expect probably a little bit more than half the field to make the cut.
Matt, talk about some of the traditions at Augusta National. No cell phone policy.
Right, of course.
And disposable cameras are sold out around there because people are scooping those up because they are allowed, and that's something you wouldn't think. But talk about what does that mean? It truly makes you go back in time, so to speak.
Right. I mean, I brought my Masters 2012 hat, but I'll be honest with you, a buddy of mine got it for me. I've never been. I actually have a buddy going down this year, so hopefully he'll pick up some gear. Look, I mean, the Masters is, traditionally the first major of the year. It is all pomp and circumstance from the Champions Dinner, which was hosted by Hideki Matsuyama the other night, to the first tee honors, which traditionally has Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer before he passed away, and Gary Player teeing off in the mist early morning to get things going. And then, of course, you've got the green jacket and all these, sort of antiquated policies, so to speak, at least in comparison to other tournaments that you might see. I would be remiss, Charles, if I didn't kind of knock one tradition of the Masters that I'm not such a big fan of, and not to knock Jim Nantz at all. I love Jim Nantz, but the TV coverage, it's got to be one of the worst in sort of modern big-time sporting events coverage. It comes on at 3 p.m., the first 20 to 30 minutes is mostly fluff stories. Then they finally cut to some golf. This year it'll be Tiger and a lot of him and not a lot of everybody else, and then it'll go off promptly at 7 p.m. I wish they would extend it, play longer hours, start it earlier, and allow the viewing public more opportunity to watch other golfers play.
And we are headed to our first break. Thank you for tuning into the Masters Special on News Talk 1400 and Win Life TV. This segment is brought to you by Burnett & Williams, helping victims of serious personal injury in the Winchester area and throughout the Northern Virginia area for over 30 years. With offices in Winchester and Leesburg, if you or someone you know has been seriously injured by someone else's negligence, contact the attorneys at Burnett & Williams today at 540-667-3500. That's 540-667-3500, or visit them online at www.burnettwilliams.com. Welcome back to the Masters Special on News Talk 1400 and Win Life TV. I'm with Matt Bass. He's an attorney, Clark County Board of Supervisor member, and a golf expert. And we just talked in the first half about Tiger, what to expect here going into the Masters when that kicks off this weekend. One of the key things that I think a lot of people on golf fans' mind is the idea of a Saudi-backed golf league that would compete with the PGA Tour as far as drawing big names away from the PGA Tour events. What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, sure, Charles. Thanks, and thanks again for having me. Look, it's a hot-button issue. It's a topic that a lot of people at least were talking about until all of a sudden Tiger Woods was playing in the Masters, so thank God for that, right? I mean, no better way to distract from that. But look, you hear buzz, and it's not just golf. It's across a lot of pro sports these days about athletes, not getting fair compensation. You saw baseball just come out of a lockout. You hear it constantly with the NFL, negotiations on collective bargaining agreements. It's hard as we sit here to feel sorry for these guys, right? I mean, as much as I love pro sports and idolized athletes, like I said, from Jordan to Cal Ripken to Tiger Woods growing up, man, it's hard to feel sorry for them when they're raking in the kind of money that they're raking off contracts. And that's not even including sponsorships for most of these guys, which are just, especially in the pro golf arena, the sponsorships dwarf what they're making as far as purses. And, of course, that's one of the gripes that the PGA Tour players have is these purses aren't enough. But then, just looking at last week, I saw that the guys finishing in the round of 16 at the match play, which that's great. I mean, that's a tough event to play in. You got to be one of the top 64 players in the world to play in it, but you're walking away with a check for $220,000. And again, that's just on top of the sponsorship money. All of these guys are sponsored these days. You can see it written all over their shirts. They've got 4, 5, 6 sponsors that they're repping out there. Unless maybe they happen to be like a Brooks Koepka who's just going to be rocking the Nike gear. But it is tough to feel sorry for them. So for me to hear them say, well, we need another league to compete at least financially with what the PGA Tour is able to provide us, I can't really take it that seriously. I don't think it's great for the game of golf. I mean, you want to see as the PGA Tour season progresses, and not just in the majors, you want to see all these names that we've talked about firing away at each other week in, week out, right? You want to see Colin Morikawa, easy for me to say, battle Xander Schauffele, say that 10 times fast, Patrick Cantlay playing Will Zalatoris, and Daniel Berger, who might run away with a tournament one week, not to mention your new number one, Scotty Sheffler. So I want to see all these guys playing, one tour, competing against each other. It's where the records are. It's where the history is. Look, if the Saudis, want to throw together a couple tournaments a year that are going to draw some big names for sort of competitive off-season events, great. I'll watch. but I'd rather not see it detract from the quality of PGA Tour play.
And speaking of the Saudi League, Phil Mickelson, it seems like he put his foot in his mouth recently talking about the Saudi League. What does the future hold for Phil? We've talked about Tiger, but what's Phil like?
Well, it's funny you should ask that. I mean, growing up as a Tiger fan, it seemed like you were one of two camps. You were either Tiger or you were Phil. I was Tiger. Was not a huge fan of Phil. It took me years to realize that in order for Tiger's legacy to be cemented in the annals of golf, that he would need Phil to be that competitor, to be the guy who was giving him a run for his money as far as longevity and career accomplishments goes. And Phil's won 45 times on the PGA Tour, so he's there. And obviously Phil Mickelson is as big a name as it gets, right, outside of Tiger Woods. It's hard to predict at this moment what exactly the future holds for Phil. Look, he does not have a squeaky clean record. He's been in some trouble in the past. He's had some strange financial dealings. And then you see him coming up with this Saudi situation saying that, he's willing to look past human rights abuses to gain leverage on the PGA Tour. Boy, I understand that might have been taken out of context, but man, that's a tough statement to make. And you got to wonder where the PGA takes him from here, really, because I think the ball is probably going to be in their court in some respects with, do they bring him back? Are they wholesale behind him? I don't know that they can per se keep him from competing, but certainly Phil has taken yet another hit on his legacy at this point in time. But look, if Tiger can rebound from it, so can the second most popular guy in golf over the last couple decades.
We'll be right back after these messages. Charles Harbaugh IV and Matt Bass with a special Masters preview on News Talk 1400 and Win Life TV. This segment is brought to you by Burnett & Williams, helping victims of serious personal injury in the Winchester area and throughout the Northern Virginia area for over 30 years. With offices in Winchester and Leesburg, if you or someone you know has been seriously injured by someone else's negligence, contact the attorneys at Burnett & Williams today at 540-667-3500. That's 540-667-3500, or visit them online at www.burnettwilliams.com. Welcome back to a special edition of the Masters Preview Show. Charles Harbaugh IV with Matt Bass talking all about the big tournament this weekend here in Augusta, Georgia. Matt, give me three things that golf fans that are listening to us, what should they watch for this weekend with the Masters?
Well, not to walk back my criticism of the coverage, but if they can get away from watching Tiger, there are going to be other things to pay attention to. But let's start with Tiger real quick, though. I mean, obviously the big question on everybody's mind is, how will Tiger look? Will he play well? Will he make the cut? If he makes the cut, will he be competitive? These are going to be the big questions on everybody's mind. And if I know Masters coverage, much like most golf coverage, to be fair, I don't mean to pigeonhole the Masters necessarily. There's going to be a lot of cameras on Tiger and not a lot on everybody else. But I'll tell you what I'm going to be watching for is Jordan Spieth. Admittedly, I'm a Jordan mark. Not a lot of people are. Some people think he's a little too squeaky clean and he can't be, all that shiny with that perfect smile of his and that aw shucks kind of Texas demeanor. But man, I'm a big Jordan Spieth fan, and I'll tell you the reason why. He's not the longest off the tee. He doesn't bomb at 330 yards. He's a little bit wild with his irons, a little bit inconsistent. He can kind of go off the rails a little bit, and boy, did he ever for the last couple years. He had in a free fall, and you wondered whether Jordan Spieth, who at age 25 had already racked up multiple majors and was looking to really put his mark in the history books, you wondered, is Jordan going to be able to get that magic back? Because he's got that certain je ne sais quoi, that touch on the golf course. Like I said, not the longest off the tee, not the most consistent iron player by any stretch of the imagination, but he's able to put it all together. When he was playing well, there was no better putter on the course. It seemed like he could make it from everywhere. He had that famous wouldn't look at the ball, would look at the hole from these shorter putts, and that was a little bit odd for folks. And then he started missing putts everywhere, and including last week, he three-putted. I don't know, you might have seen it on a little Instagram clip that he missed about a 2-footer, and then he missed about a 1.5-footer comebacker. So he 3-putted from inside 3 feet, which we can say happens to most of us. But Jordan has a stellar record at Augusta, just going back over the last decade. I mean, you're talking about T2 win, T2 11, 3rd, 21st, 46th, and then 3rd. And, of course, the 21st and 46th were when he wasn't playing well. And he then put together a nice round of 67 after kind of flailing around at the Valero Texas Open last week. So I look for Jordan to play well, and I hope that he can get back on top because, in my mind, he's been about as low as you can go golf-wise without struggling with any serious injuries or anything like that. So outside of Tiger, I'll be watching to see what Jordan Spieth does. And then I'll be looking to see what Rory Mcilroy does, too. It feels like, especially with the sort of onset of some of these young guns, Rory is kind of faded. But Rory has played well, especially in the last year or so. And, he loves Augusta. He had the epic implosion years ago where he lost a big-time lead on the back nine. And I've heard people say maybe that sunk things for Rory. Maybe he's not going to be able to climb back out of that, at least with respect to Augusta. But, he's playing well right now, probably in as good a form coming into the Masters as he's been in a while. And so I look to see if Rory can take things down. And to give you a little fourth thing, I'm also going to be looking for some of these younger guys who are just now creeping onto the scene. And I'm looking at the odds right here, and you've got some like Patrick Cantley, who 30 years old. Cam Smith, 25. John Rahm's going to be a big betting favorite this week. Victor Hovland, another young gun. Looking to see if those guys are going to be at the top of the leaderboard come Sunday afternoon.
And then you mentioned it, Las Vegas is big on John Rahm this weekend. They like Justin Thomas as well. So I'm going to put you in the hot seat, Matt, here. What is your prediction for this weekend? Who do you think pulls this one out?
Yeah, so I'm going to be rooting for Jordan Spieth, but I'm not going to pick him. I'm going to pick Brooks Koepka, and here's why. Brooks is coming off an injury too, but he's playing pretty well. And for a stretch there over the last couple years, nobody played better in big-time tournaments. This guy racked up multiple majors in a couple-year span. When he wants to turn it on, there's almost nobody that could compete with him. And I think he has finally turned the corner physically. He was struggling with a knee issue. I think he's finally back off that. At least he says he is. So I'm going to pick Brooks to win by a stroke or two over Jordan Spieth. And I'm going to throw Colin Morikawa in there too. He doesn't have a great track record at Augusta yet, but he will. This guy is always at the top. And he's also in as good a form as anybody right now. So I'm going to look for Koepka over Spieth and Morikawa this year. That's where I'm going.
Matt, back to local golf. Where's a hidden gem of a golf course for local golfers who might want to get out there this weekend and play 18 holes?
That is a good question. I'm going to give you Front Royal Country Club. Right down the road from here, little 9-hole track, but man, it plays tough. It's got some real long holes and some pretty scenic views. It's kind of, I won't say it's off the beaten path, but it's certainly off the radar with respect to the traditional local golf courses. That's a good one if you want to get out and experience a different golf experience in the Shenandoah Valley area.
Well, for Charles Harbaugh IV and Matt Bass, we'd like to thank Burnett and Williams for sponsoring our Masters preview show. We hope everybody enjoys the tournament this weekend and checks it out and see if some of Matt's predictions come true. Thank you for tuning in to Win Life TV and News Talk 1400.